Virginia has had a lot of growth as far as data centers. So that's why you're seeing actually a lot of the utility scale projects happening in Virginia. Hello and welcome to the Solar Maverick podcast, where solar meets entrepreneurship and experience. I'm your host, Benoy Thanjan.
And I'm your co-host, Li Wang.
Let's get into it. Hi, this is Benoy, your host of the Solar Maverick podcast. I wanted to personally invite our listeners to our summer solstice party, which is on Thursday, June 20th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Hudson Hall in Jersey City, New Jersey. We'll be celebrating the summer solstice, which is the longest period of daylight, and our Solar Maverick podcast, which is one of the most popular podcasts for solar energy. I'm also one of the co-owners of the event venue, which is Hudson Hall, which is a Czech beer garden smokehouse. The cost to attend the event is $10 and light food will be served. You could learn more information about the summer solstice party on the Reneu Energy website, which is RENEU energy.com. Again, it's Reneu Energy, RENEU energy.com. We look forward to meeting our listeners, and Li Wang, who's one of the co-hosts of the podcast, and some of our guests will be there, and we look forward to seeing you there. We really appreciate your support of the Solar Maverick podcast. Thank you.
All right. Welcome, everyone. We're on episode 28.
Wow.
Solar Maverick, episode 28. It's amazing. Benoy and I just had a great meeting with Ani Ramen. For those of you who don't know Ani Ramen, if you're in Jersey City, Maplewood, Summit, where else can you eat?
Montclair. We have 2 locations in Jersey City on Newark Avenue and Harborside.
The best ramen, best broth, best noodles, and we're fired up and ready to go. We just had a great meeting with one of the owners, and it's something that we're both very high on this business, and we both have some future interest in here. And Benoy was the one who brought me in, and I'm happy to announce it here on the Solar Maverick contest.
What are you announcing?
Well, I'm going to be joining the family in the Ani Ramen, and
yes.
It's one of these things that we've been thinking a long time ago. So we're going to be investing in Ani Ramen. I think we mentioned it a little bit last episode about Benoy's partnership, but now Benoy's bringing me into his family and his circle. So
yeah, definitely welcome, Lee. We talked about this the last episode about the importance of passive income. I, as you know, another friend of mine, Noah, as well, is involved in the investment with the American Dream opportunity with Ani Ramen. I'm all about diversification in great sorts of investments. I know that was something that we talked about the last episode that's very important. Obviously, my passion is renewable energy and sustainability, but I also like to invest in good businesses as well, and not just the same in types of investments. And I also learn a lot, and then I bring it to different investment opportunities. It's crazy, actually, that like each week I might get 5 to 10 different investment opportunities that I'm looking at, and it runs like the whole gamut. I feel like the Shark Tank, it's one of my favorite shows that I watch all the time, and a show called The Profit, which is also on CNBC with Marcus Lemonis. So it's interesting now in my own life, I have different investments, and I'm all about diversification, all about passive income where, you don't have to be there, and you're basically receiving distribution checks. Obviously, there are risks in any type of investment. You have to be comfortable with it. It's all about the team of people, their vision. I'm all about honesty and transparency as well. Some investments haven't been successful, but I've learned from those experiences. But overall, it's been a very positive experience. And, happy that you guys are excited and welcome to the Ani Ramen family, Li Wang.
And more, I hate when people say, oh, he or she just got lucky, because you create your own luck. And that's life. And one thing I know about Benoy is he talks to everyone. I walk down streets with Benoy here in Jersey City, and he says hello to a lot of people, I have to say. And it's interesting. The connection to Ani Ramen actually came through Benoy's Muay Thai instructor. And it's just about being out there and listening and knowing about other people. You never know what one thing's going to lead to another. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because I look at it, and when you're walking down the street, I come up with all these money making opportunities. And there's so many people that are very creative and smart, and they have their own expertise. And so there's a lot of opportunity out there, especially now. And, It was interesting with my Muay Thai instructor. We went a little bit about this in another episode, but he was the one who made the introduction to Ani Ramen because I was one of the owners of Hudson Hall and he needed help analyzing the opportunity. And once I was helping him analyze it, I thought, hey, I'm definitely interested. And here we are now. So it's, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all about building your network and building strong, genuine, transparent relationships. And this is obviously like friends and family. It's not open to everyone. And these are like great opportunities out there. So
take your opportunities when you can.
Yeah,
Speaking of, we got a lot of feedback from listeners last time, a few weeks ago, that they wanted to hear more about how Benoy, our host of the Solar Maverick, had met one of the most important people in history. So, Benoy, let's hear from you expand a little bit about your meeting with former President Barack Obama.
Sure. So that was really surreal. I can't believe it. It was June of last year, June of 2018 in Beverly Hills. And at that time, actually, he was basically living a private life and not out there in the public. And this was actually his first public event. It was at a DNC event in Beverly Hills.
How did you get invited to that in first place?
So I actually, before I started my company, or actually the first year, which is now going to be 7 years, I was part of the Startup Leadership Program, which was basically, it's an accelerator that basically helps people start businesses. So they basically it's an application process, and then different entrepreneurs get accepted, and it's a course over a year's time. Anyway, one of the alumni recommended someone that I should meet with President Obama and potentially talk about solar energy. So this was first through like the Startup Leadership Program. And I was anyway going to be in California for this Intersolar conference. We were actually exhibiting. And that's why I decided actually to go to that dinner where basically President Obama actually spoke at someone's mansion in Beverly Hills. And it was pretty crazy, actually, because I flew from New York and I was running late. Right. And there's only a certain period of time to actually meet with him. Luckily, I got there in time where I could meet with him. But the first part of it was like basically a dinner. And then he was getting interviewed by the DNC chairman. Yeah. But before that happened, actually, Christina Aguilera performed like a few songs. So it's funny, we talked about Mandy Moore the last episode. Now we're talking so it's pretty funny, the same sort of genre of music at that time. But actually what was really surreal was I had the front seat in this dinner. Right. So I'm like all...
So wait, what did Christina Aguilera perform?
She actually didn't perform any of her songs. Like I was really looking forward to Genie in the Bottle and some of her first
the
classics. But she was actually performing Aretha Franklin songs. And it was amazing. I mean, she's got an amazing voice.
Definitely.
And I was like so excited because I was literally in the front row of this pretty big event. And what was surreal about that actually was once President Obama was getting interviewed, or former President Obama was getting interviewed by the DNC chair, he was looking at me for affirmation.
Oh, yeah?
So it was so weird because I'm like, just like literally right in front of his eye contact. There's a stage. Yeah. And then like one of the things that he was talking about was we actually need young Democratic candidates now for the election. And so he was asking anyone in the audience if they were interested. Then he was saying to focus on not talk about President Trump, but talk about the issues to improve our economy, to actually stop the Democratic Party to stop complaining about the situation and focus on the real issues that will get Americans excited to basically, vote for the candidates.
Right.
But one of the other craziest thing was I came late to this dinner, right? So this couple like basically is like getting me food because I'm hungry. And I'm like, oh, who are you guys? They're like, oh, this is our mansion. And I'm like, funny. Really?
The servants are.
It's kind of crazy. Like they were very making sure that I had food. No one else really kind of cared. And then it was crazy because helicopters.
Just to show you never know who you're talking to.
You never know who you're talking to. And I asked, oh, what do you do? He's like, I have 450 discount retail superstores across the country. And the crazy thing was there was helicopters like crazy flying over, because this was kind of President Obama's first sort of public appearance,
Yeah.
the paparazzi and all this stuff. But then what I found out 2 months later was that I basically sat in this one seat, which was in the front. But what ended up happening was Oprah Winfrey canceled.
Oh.
And then they thought I would actually be a good person to be in that spot. So it was like a really very sort of surreal sort of experience.
So you came in and claimed Oprah's spot.
Which is crazy. I didn't know that until like September. This event was in June. The woman who was recommended me from the startup leadership program, she actually lives in San Francisco, and then we actually met, and she told me because it was weird, because like I'm seeing the governor of that time of California, Jerry Brown, and he's sitting like 5 tables away, and I'm like, how am I here? Because it's a pretty big backyard, and I thought I would be like all of the way in the back, but here I have like the front and center.
See what happens when you arrive late. You get the royal treatment.
Seriously, it was
the VIP.
It was really very surreal. And then obviously, I met with President Obama, and it was very surreal. Like there was basically a line of people. There was a curtain. Basically, I was with Secret Service, and then we started having conversations. It was funny. I was first trying to give him his business card, and then we're joking around. And then he actually held up the line because we were having a great conversation. So I basically told him, I'm in solar energy. This is what I do. And he's like, we need more Americans like you who are passionate about renewable energy and sustainability, both doing great for our country in the US, but internationally. And then I mentioned to him, as a minority, you're a role model. Like you're giving minorities and women to feel like there's an opportunity that they could become president of the United States, which I never thought would happen in my lifetime.
Right.
And then he said, well, you presenting yourself, well, why don't you run for president in 2020? And so I have a special...
how's your background check?
Well, I figured if President Trump could get through it, hopefully maybe I could do it. So I have a special announcement to make here on the podcast.
Oh, wow.
That I will not be running for the 2020 presidential election. So
Mayor of Jersey City?
The mayor of Jersey City is not running, but there's a lot of different candidates. And, I really told him at the end of the day, like, I'm not a politician. I'm passionate about renewable energy and sustainability. And so he said, oh, yeah, that's fine. But it was interesting. It kind of like, I was surprised, like a former president of the United States asking me.
So how was your internal temperature while you were in conversation with Obama? I mean, were you nervous, or did he take over? Did he make you feel at ease? And people want to know, like, how is he in real life?
Yeah, definitely. So like, I was definitely nervous. Like you could see actually pictures of me in this meeting when you go onto the Reneu Energy website. But he immediately actually made me feel comfortable. Like he had a big smile. He came, shook our hand, and then we both were joking around a little bit before we actually started talking. So it was like a pretty surreal sort of experience. And he's listening to me talking about solar energy, and he seemed really interested about it. And then obviously, I told you it was only for a few minutes, but it was a very surreal sort of conversation.
Well, I can't top this story. I did meet Hillary Clinton when I was a kid at a Phillies game, but I mean, she was in the box with then Mayor Rendell, but it wasn't. I was a kid, but so I can't top your story.
Yeah, definitely. It's a once in a lifetime experience, and I'm very grateful and fortunate to have that. And that's all I really have to say about that. I know people have asked about more detail. We did talk about it briefly in a previous episode. But we received a lot of feedback of people wanting to know more about that meeting.
All right. So let's launch right in what's on tap for this episode.
Sure.
We're going to loosely call this one the Virginia episode. Last episode, we talked a lot about California. And I actually don't know that much about Virginia growing up.
Sure.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on there for you in the solar energy scene?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually spoke at a conference there, actually. So I've just got back from Virginia. I also was actually in Maryland and DC as well in meetings just like on the way there. And basically a company called Brownfield Listings asked me actually to speak at a conference that they had in Richmond, Virginia. And it's about developing solar on brownfields and landfills. And those are ideal places to basically develop solar energy projects. And basically what Brownfield Listings does is they help with finding the next redevelopment opportunity with brownfield properties, redevelopment projects. They also put RFPs on the nation's largest dedicated. They basically have created the nation's largest dedicated redevelopment marketplace. They see that a lot of people actually want to go solar when it comes to landfills and brownfields. And the exciting thing is, like Dan French, who's the CEO and founder of Brownfield Listings, we'll actually have him interviewed on the podcast really soon. This event was in Richmond, Virginia. It was called Brightfields,
Right.
2019. I spoke actually at 2 sessions called Deal Making 101, Financing in Brief, PPA, RFPs, etc. And then Deal Making 2000, I spoke, which was Due Diligence, PPA 2, Pitfalls and Best Practices, with 4 different panelists. Jim Thornhill from McGuire Woods, which is a law firm. Actually, they're all law firms. I was the only person from a non-law firm. Charles Halden from Curtis, Mallet Provost, Colt and Mosley. Sorry, I apologize. I'm probably butchering some of these names. And Michael Obidier from Holland Knight. So it was a great conference because it was actually, they had a lot of landowners in Virginia, and they had almost like a speed dating where basically we develop projects. So we're meeting with these landowners and trying to understand their projects. So it was a pretty unique opportunity. And then also we'll have the PowerPoint from those 2 presentations on the website. And then they also had the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality and Brownfield Listings. They had a webinar about the Virginia solar market. And we actually are going to also post that on the website, basically the audio and video of that. And I basically talked about solar energy, the different incentives, specifically about the Virginia solar market.
Yeah, so for all those listening out there, we're going to have this, and actually I haven't done it yet, so I'm going to hold myself to it. We're going to have a
accountability partner.
Accountability, right? So we're going to have a page on Reneu Energy's website, which is RENEU energy.com, and we're going to do /resources. So I'm going to make that page for all the resources. You can go there, learn about some of these things, topics that Benoy is talking about. And Benoy, I wanted to ask you, what made you qualified to speak to these topics as a non-attorney? Like, why did they want you specifically on these 2 types of panels?
Really because I have an expertise on financing of solar projects and the development of solar projects from a business perspective. That's a different perspective than obviously attorneys could bring to the situation. So that's why they wanted me to be in the deal making 101, 200.
What were some of the quick takeaways
Sure.
you can share with people before they dive in deeper into the topic?
Definitely. So just high level, I think I'm just really going to high level talk about the Virginia solar market for people here on the podcast. We won't go into the complex sort of financing. Happy to have these conversations online. But there's a company called SEIA, which we're a member of, which is the biggest solar lobbying group. And basically, they have statistics about Virginia. So Virginia basically has about 730.2 megawatts installed. Basically, on the ranking of the 50 states, it's about 17 of the 50 states as far as solar energy. The percentage of actual electricity that's solar, it's now 1.03%. But the key thing about Virginia is the growth projections are going to be huge over the next 5 years. So basically, SEIA is saying that it's going to be 2,666 megawatts over the next 5 years, which is, we currently have 730. So you're basically in Virginia. So you're basically talking about 4 times more, which would then increase Virginia's rankings to be the 8th state in solar and not the 17th state. Virginia in 2017 had a record amount of development. There basically was 375 megawatts that was developed. Most of the projects were utility scale projects, and there was practically no solar installed in 2012. And then 2018, this past year, it was 125 megawatts. So it dropped precipitously. And the reason for the drop was because President Trump put tariffs on solar panels, on inverters, and steel. So on these utility scale projects, the margins are extremely tight. Yes, you do have federal incentives, which is the investment tax credit, which is 30%, the 5-year accelerated depreciation, which accounts for 50% of the value of the project. But then Virginia actually doesn't have a state level incentive. Okay. And these utility projects, the margins are pretty tight. What we're seeing now is that the pricing of panels have become what it was before the tariff. We're seeing substantial increases in the efficiencies of these panels, allowing more production of solar in the same surface area. But really what's actually really pushed the development of solar in Virginia is actually a concept that we've talked about, corporate PPAs
Right.
and companies actually having 100% renewable energy
You've
goals.
written about this topic.
I've written about this topic. You could look, we'll have this in the future, Reneu Energy / resources. There's an article that I wrote in both Renewable Energy World and PV Magazine that talks about it. But what's been really key is like companies like...
Benoy, I got to teach you how to say that. It's renewenergy.com /
Oh, backslash. Sorry.
Yeah, get with it. It's a digital age.
Reneu Energy. That's why I have Li.
Yeah.
Reneu Energy.
We'll have links to it.
They'll be lit in the notes. And so basically, like Amazon,
Right.
Microsoft, Facebook, they all have 100% renewable energy goals. But they also own data centers and they want to get power from an offsite solar project. And Virginia has had a lot of growth as far as data centers. So that's why you're seeing actually a lot of the utility scale projects happening in Virginia. Mm-hmm. The big developer of Virginia is Dominion Energy, which is the big utility. And that's the primary reason why you've seen a lot of development. Like basically, Dominion has developed 656 megawatts worth of projects, which is the majority of projects that have been developed to date. They have something with Amazon where there's going to be about 250 megawatts, some of that already in service, that they're going to be building in the future that basically supplies both current and future Amazon data centers in Ohio and Northern Virginia. Also, the new energy master plan actually for Virginia calls for 3 gigawatts of solar. The 2018 Virginia Energy Plan calls for 3 gigawatts of solar and wind installations by 2022. Another big thing that happened was there's an electric cooperative called Northern Virginia Electric Cooperative, and they agreed to sell their power through a long-term power purchase agreement, which equates to 300 megawatts to a company called D. Shaw Renewable Energy Investments. I actually used to work at the company a very long time ago, and the projects are expected to go online on 2023. So really, it's been the proliferation of data centers in Virginia, companies requiring 100% renewable energy as their goals, and then not buying RECs, meaning renewable energy credits, but they want to directly have basically a long-term power purchase agreement with an offsite corporate PPA, which those long-term contracts are allowing projects to be built in Virginia. And that's basically the summary of the Virginia market.
Oh, wow, that's a lot. So there's a lot going on in that state.
There's a lot going on in that state, and there's a lot going to be happening in the future. Amazon's second headquarters now, as well as going to be obviously in Seattle, but then also in Northern Virginia as well. So Virginia seems to be, and Dominion has been responding to its big commercial industrial customers, making sure they're happy by having, long-term PPAs for renewable energy.
Wow, that's amazing. So Benoy, tell us a little bit more about any other upcoming events that maybe people can meet with you or connect with you or find you.
I'm actually speaking in 2 weeks at the New York 2019 Solar Summit in Albany. That NYSEA, which is a lobbying group in New York for solar, is having an event. We're the member, and I'm actually moderating the panel. It's about community solar, translating pipelines into deployments. We're actually developing a community solar project in New York City. The other panelists are great. We have Tom Gusick, who's the managing general partner of Solar Park Energy, Michael Mullen, and they're a developer of community solar projects in Northern New York. Michael Mullen, managing director of Community Power Partners, which is a customer acquisition management company for community solar, and Hannah Mueller, who's the director of public policy for Clearway Energy Group. That was the old NRG, which then was sold to a Japanese, I think, investment company, and she works on the policy side in New York. And so that's where I'll be speaking. Obviously, you could always reach out to us on info@renewenergy.com. On our website as well, you'll see our phone number as well, and feel free to reach out to us.
Benoy, it seems like you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to have a place on some kind of discussion on all the major solar conferences, at least in this region.
Yeah, so it's been pretty amazing. Yeah. I also actually spoke at SPI last year. I moderated a panel on corporate PPAs in September, Solar Power International. It was actually in Anaheim, California. So yeah, definitely there's been a lot of, speaking engagements And there's some that we're actually working through in the pipeline. And I think that's great. Obviously the podcast has helped as well. So people could see, potentially what they would get. And then just if they've had a good experience from me speaking at an event, it seems like they'll ask you to do that again. So
you build some momentum.
You build some momentum. Obviously, if anyone's interested in having, me speak at an event as well, feel free to reach out to us at the info@reneuenergy.com. And I think it's great from a perspective of education and visibility, and then people get to know you, and it's easier to network after you're a speaker at an event versus just purely being a participant.
So those who are interested, Benoy's fee is $30,000.
It's up to negotiation.
$30,000. It's interesting. I used to help clients get speaking engagements through speaking bureaus. And it's amazing that what a good public speaker can command these days. Benoy, tell us a little bit about it. Have you always been comfortable public speaking, and was that something you had to work on, or was that something you always had an interest in from a young age, or did it come later in life?
So I've never actually enjoyed speaking until later in life, but I've always actually spoke at different events. I was part of student council.
Were you on the debate team?
I was not part of the debate team, unfortunately. And then, but I was, and I've had, positions in different organizations, both within school and then after I graduated school. And then I was also part of Toastmasters, which I don't know if you're familiar. Something. So Toastmasters was really great for me as far as like practicing public speaking. And
one thing about Toastmasters, like I never did it myself. I wish I had, but there's a lot of accountability there. There's you give speeches in front of your peers, and there's a lot of good training there. So good to hear that you underwent that process. Probably prepared you.
It definitely prepared, and I think the more practice you have, the more feedback that you get to improve. I'm still working on improving. There's things that I notice that I'm not doing correctly, or I could do a better job, and just trying to incorporate it. So if you haven't heard of Toastmasters, it's definitely like a great way if you want to improve your public speaking, and it's all over pretty much the US and internationally. They start off with 10 speeches, and the first speech is really talking about yourself, which is a lot easier to give a speech. And then sometimes it's about a particular topic. They count the ums and likes, and they make sure that you're within a certain time, because that's, I think, an important part.
Accountability,
as well.
Right?
Accountability. So it's great. It's very transparent that where you could take it. So yes.
That's great. So do you like being the speaker, or do you like moderating more? Or do you just like a mix of things?
It's a mix of things depending on what it is. It's interesting. I've been moderating a lot of panels, but also speaking as well. It just kind of depends, being a panelist or even giving like a straight sort of speech. So it's kind of run all the gamut. Depends on the type of conference. I think people think because we have the podcast that like a moderator is a great role.
Oh, so you've been getting more requests to be moderator from being a podcast?
Yeah, that's which I thought is pretty interesting.
Wow.
So
that's crazy. We've come a long way. Thanks for staying with us.
And as Lee said, we're, I guess, at our 28th episode. It's just kind of amazing. I was just talking to Lee about this like in September. I was just on a podcast, and to kind of see how far, and there's a team of people who've made this happen, and we're improving as time goes on, and we appreciate everyone's support and feedback. And we have some cool episodes actually coming up. Like we have a lot of cool guests coming up, but actually my colleague Suzanne, who's also the co-host, Suzanne's the vice president of business development at Reneu Energy. We're going to have an SREC 101 solar renewable energy credits podcast and the New Jersey market. And also we'll do one on the New York market. We're also having a lot of great guests coming up. So we'll definitely announce them soon. And obviously, if you're interested in being a guest, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, and tell us why you should be speaking on the topic you want to speak about. And we'll consider people as guests. And one thing that we really want to do is keep hearing feedback from you on what types of guests, what kind of topics you want to cover. Speaking of Benoy, I always want to ask you, now that you've been doing podcasts, what are some podcasts that you like to listen to? Are there any particular that you recommend for our listeners?
Sure. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and that's actually what got me interested in using this medium as far as marketing, other than Lee thinking my voice and his voice and us being very talkative would be ideal. But I really actually like Jim Quick.
Okay.
It's called Quick Brain, Quick with the K, Kwik, and Tom Bilyeu from Impact Theory. I find these two, basically, Jim Quick talks about improving your brain functions, and it's very short and to the point.
Yeah.
And then Tom Bilyeu, just like, I kind of like these self-help things, and he has a lot of interesting guests on his show. And I like the one he had with Michael Strahan. I'm biased, obviously, as a Giants fan, but he's had like just a lot of interesting guests. Jay Shetty, who's now, I guess, this big life coach, Superwoman, who actually follows me on Instagram. But and then
isn't Instagram a strange beast, right?
Yeah. So, but she's actually going to be taking over for the Late Show for Carson Daly. That's the first woman of Asian or Indian descent doing a late night show. But yeah, there's like a lot of amazing. Tim Ferriss as well. How We Built This, both of us like that. Yeah. Also, Lee's trying to be a sponsor on a podcast that I really like that he introduced. If you want to talk about Ben Bergeron as well.
So
your podcast that you like to listen to.
Sure. One of the biggest discoveries
outside of the solar podcast.
Yeah, exactly. The Solar Maverick, the best podcast in solar, obviously. But one thing that I've been awoken to, if that's the proper
Awaken
term.
the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. Are you talking about? Just kidding. Sorry.
I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. I worked for a woman named Heidi Krupp. Shout out to Heidi, who was Tony Robbins' personal PR manager for many years, and I've gotten firsthand insight into Tony Robbins. He's definitely still the monster of coaching and self-help, self-improvement. Just because he's the OG doesn't mean his power is any less. But Tony Robbins, shout out to Tony Robbins. So one thing I've been taking a lot of care of is my personal health, because Benoy too. If you don't know Benoy, he has 5 gym memberships. He diversifies his investments and also his physical health regimen. I started doing CrossFit about over a year ago at a great gym called Black House Strength and Fitness, and
in Jersey City.
Jason, the owner there, has taught me more about embracing my possibilities and not just talking about just exercise, right? Anyway, you can exercise, but what's really opened up my mind to is, people who do CrossFit, and you can say what you want about CrossFit. There's good ones and bad ones out there, but people who are drawn to CrossFit are generally high achievers. And there's a coach named Ben Bergeron out of CrossFit New England. He trains the top CrossFit athletes, but he has a podcast called Chasing Excellence, which kind of sums up the topics there. And he talks about not only training, but he just talks about great daily habits and pursuing your best. And, I kind of joke that he's so nerdy about optimizing his life and making it efficient, but he's always kind of right? He's always offering great tips. So Chasing Excellence, Ben Bergeron, he gives great book recommendations. One thing he always talks about is, putting the most important things first in the day. So you take care of things that are really going to move the needle. Benoy and I always talk about that. So really kind of filter out things that aren't really going to make a difference, the chatter, and really focus on executing on the top level tasks that are going to change your life. So I think that's one of my favorite. And I have to repeat Guy Raz, NPR's How I Built This. It's an amazing series. It's very inspirational. It's all about entrepreneurial stories. So some of my favorite episodes are about actually a company called Bonobos, a clothing company, and how they just started trying to find better fitting pants, and it turned out to be a big company, eventually bought by Walmart. Jake Burton, the founder of Burton Snowboards, is featured on there, and his amazing story of how he's just created the sport of snowboarding. And one of the craziest episodes I never thought I'd like, and I always try to listen to or read or watch things that I don't think I'll be interested in, but was about the son of the guy who invented Alvin and the Chipmunks. And it's about how he revived his father's franchise, but it's a crazy story. I don't want to spoil anything, but How I Built This. Guy Raz is the host on it's an NPR podcast series. It's really excellent.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And actually, Ben Bergeron has a book called Chasing Excellence, and I'm actually reading that right now, Liam.
Oh, you're
about
ahead of me.
25%.
Yeah.
So far, it's pretty good. It's really interesting for me, and it's like kind of all the things that we've talked about. I mean, obviously, these books have great recommendations and ideas, but the challenge is really to implement them.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part of it. And really, it's not just having these ideas, but then actually putting it into your daily practice and making it a habit.
And one book that Benoy and I always refer to, and it's one that I'm so thankful to Benoy for recommending, and it's one his father recommended to him at what age were you? 14?
Maybe 14 or 15 years
Pretty
old.
young, right? That's a young mind. So it's Dale Carnegie's. Repeat the title so I don't butcher it.
Sure. So Dale Carnegie, the one that I really like is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living.
Yeah.
And that's one of his biggest books that he has out there.
So this book, I would say, if you finish whatever you're reading now and pick this one up, because it's really all these practices on how to mitigate worry, eliminate worry, so you can start focusing your energy on doing things. And the way it's written, the humble way it's written, it's just anecdotes and stories of how people show gratitude and realize that no matter how bad you think your personal situation is, there's always a way out. There's always a solution. There's always someone who may be less fortunate than you, but really you're wasting your time and energy by worrying if you can't do anything about it. And it sounds like such a simple principle, but I'm not doing it justice by describing it. It's just one of those books that it's beautifully written, and I was actually it's timeless, but it really I hate to be hyperbolic, but it will change your life after reading it. There's immediate applicable things. Focus on now, right? Focus on what's going on right now, where you are, how you can affect change, and stop worrying. The way I'm describing it is simplistic compared to the way he writes about it, but it's a really great book.
Yeah, I think it talks about gratitude. It's basically, about positivity, looking at the glass half full instead of half empty. But the big thing that to translate that I feel like they have this actually in there, it's called the Serenity Prayer.
Yeah.
So basically the Serenity Prayer is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's it right there.
Yeah, that pretty much really sums up the book. But it's great because they take a lot of great stories. But I think that this quote and prayer really kind of summarizes the.
And one thing, even as I used to be a newspaper writer. So the way that people write, the best writing you don't even notice. And that's one thing. Some of these books that we talk about, some of these self-help motivational books, I just think that some people get kind of misled by the titles. But the way that it's executed, and from a reading it, it's just so much deeper than what the titles may suggest. It's not so simple, yet it is, right? And then it's back to what Benoy says. It's practicing it. It's one thing to read a few pages and then kind of let it fade, but stop yourself. When you're sitting there and you're worrying about things that you can't do anything about, you can't even do anything about it. You're just stressing to thinking that it's going to alleviate something, but it's really just causing you physical harm by stressing yourself, and it keeps you from executing on the things you want to execute. So Dale Carnegie, the way he writes many of his books, from what I've read, he said treat it like a workbook, right? Recount chapters, reread chapters, and test yourself. Have someone else hold you accountable to these behaviors, and it's that part that matters.
Definitely. I mean, that's huge, putting it into practice, and even little improvements over time become cumulative and compounding. I mean, it's amazing for me. When I first started the business, I started reading a lot, and now I'm seeing, me implementing these small things, but over time you start seeing these big gains that you have over time.
And this just brings me back, and I'll end on this note because we're wrapping up on time, but even with this podcast, we could have sat there and been worried about how people would think, whether we would operate the equipment, whether or not we would be able to stick to recording this many episodes. And hey, if we were caught up in that worry, we wouldn't even be here and we wouldn't even have this. So, if there's something you want, what's the worst that can happen, right? Someone might reject you, but just go at it again. And, I don't want to sound like too hokey, but I just want you guys all to set aside your fears. I think that's the biggest thing. It's we are on this earth for a very short amount of time, and maybe I'm getting emotional on a Friday sitting here with Benoy, but really it's let's do this.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great way to close the podcast. And I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, we literally, from the Create Your Life series airing the middle of September,
by Kevin Y. Brown.
Kevin Y. Brown, and then to basically have our first episode release on November 15th. It was really, really busy, really, really hectic. Trust me, without like Lee as well pushing me to do this, it wouldn't have happened because, but we really just focused on getting something out there, and we felt like over time we'll get better at it and improve it. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we still have a long way to go.
We still have a long way.
And we want to add more. We want to hear feedback, and I'm talking a lot today, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, definitely. You're the co-host.
Yeah. So till next time, contact us at info@reneuenergy.com. And how else can they reach you? Connect with Benoy on Instagram.
I don't want people to really we'll see about Instagram.
Okay,
I'm not sure.
What are all the ways people can connect?
So LinkedIn, you can find me on
all right,
Benoy
that's safer.
Thanjan. And then on our website as well, you'll see our address and phone number if you want to call out to us as well. I mean, I have to admit we're inundated with the amount of people reaching out to us, but it'll take us some time to get back to.
Just say you're a Solar Maverick listener. You'll get a priority upgrade. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please go to iTunes and Stitcher Radio and leave us a 5-star review. That helps us build this community, and that's what we're all about right now. Building this community as big as we can to deliver as much value as we can.